They came in black cars, wearing diamonds and designer smiles, like queens arriving at a battlefield they already believed they'd won. And I was just the maid, still drying the same glass I'd been holding when my world started to fall apart. My name is Lena Monroe, and I never wanted to be seen. For the past 4 months, I'd woken up before sunrise, taken to buses to the edge of Westchester County, and walked the last 3 blocks to the Delaney estate. I cleaned floors that could fit my whole apartment. I ironed shirts worth more than a month of my rent. I didn't complain. It was honest work. Quiet work. And the boy who lived there, Eli Delaney, 8 years old, he was quiet too, not shy. Just gentle. He barely spoke the first week. But he watched everything. The kind of watching that made you feel like he could see straight through you. And maybe he could, because after a few days, he started hovering near me when I cleaned the kitchen. Then he started drawing while I folded laundry. Then he started asking if I liked cinnamon. It was never much. Just a smile. Just a question. But it felt like sunlight through a keyhole. And I didn't know yet how much that boy needed light. His father, Michael Delaney, was some kind of finance guy, the kind who didn't carry a wallet because people just handed him things. Early 40s, tall, always in a suit, widowed. His wife had died 2 years ago in a car crash on the Palisades. He never talked about it. Eli never talked about it. But the sadness lived in that house like a permanent tenant. Until today. Because today, the black cars arrived. It was exactly 8:07 a.m. I was wiping down the glass dining table when I saw them pull up to the gate. 1. Then another. Then 3 more, all sleek and silent like they'd practiced the entrance. The driveway was a half moon, long enough for a parade, and today that's exactly what it felt like. 5 women stepped out. High heels, tailored coats, lipstick red as blood. And before I could blink, I heard Mr. Delaney's voice upstairs, low but firm. Eli. The guests we talked about are here, remember? The 5 women. There was a pause. A small voice replied, so. One of them is going to be my new mom, and then his father. That's right. These are impressive women. From good families, educated. Kind. I'm sure you'll like at least one, and if I don't, a silence. You will. I dropped the glass. It slipped straight out of my hand and shattered across the floor. The crash echoed up through the stairs like a gunshot. I didn't even realize I'd sliced my finger until I saw the blood on the rag. Seconds later, I heard footsteps. Fast. Heavy. Mur. Delaney and Eli came rushing downstairs. And what they saw stopped them cold. There I was, kneeling on the marble tile, blood dripping from my hand as I tried to sweep up the shards. And standing over me, arms crossed, a tall woman in a black coat and sunglasses, not offering help. Not asking if I was okay. Just watching me. Like I was an insect on her shoe. That was imported crystal, she said, tilting her head. Worth more than she probably makes in a year. I didn't look up. My voice came out low. I'm sorry. It was an accident. Of course it was, she said with a little laugh. People like you aren't used to expensive things. Excuse me, Mr. Delaney cut in, stepping forward. What's going on here? The woman turned and smiled like a perfume ad. Oh, Michael. I'm Blair Kingsley. Just arrived. Your maid dropped my champagne flute. The other women entered behind her, one by one, pausing when they saw me on the ground. No one offered a hand. One of them, a thin blonde with an icy stare, arched her brow. Lovely start, she said. I'm Vivian Crane. Accidents happen, I suppose. They tend to happen more often, she added, glancing at me, when people aren't trained properly. Eli stepped out from behind his dad and walked straight toward me. Lena, are you okay? I looked up for the first time. My hand was still bleeding. My eyes were wet. I forced a smile. It's just a scratch, sweetheart. Blair narrowed her eyes. Sweetheart, Mr. Delaney's jaw tightened. Let's all introduce ourselves properly, he said, trying to take control. Lena is part of our household. And these are the candidates for the arrangement we discussed. Blair spoke first. Blair Kingsley. My father runs Kingsley Aviation. I have a master's in international relations from Columbia. Vivian Crane, the blonde added. Model, lifestyle influencer. Lived in Paris for 6 years. A woman in a sharp gray suit adjusted her glasses. Carmen Duvall. Corporate attorney. Harvard Law. Danica Wells, said the redhead. Dermatologist. Private clinic in Beverly Hills. Last was a sleek woman with dark hair and an architectural tote. Naomi Sterling. Interior designer. Manhattan-based, they stood tall. Polished. Ready. And in their eyes, I didn't exist. I was still crouched by the glass when Mr. Delaney explained the plan. The 5 of them would live in the house for 30 days. Get to know him. Get to know Eli. And at the end of the month, if all went well, one would become part of the family. Will she still be here? Blair asked, nodding toward me. Of course, Mr. Delaney said. Lena's been with us for 4 months. She's part of the home. Vivian exchanged a look with Carmen. As long as she knows her place, she said. What does that mean, Mr. Delaney asked sharply. Nothing, Carmen cut in. Just that structure is important. Everyone should know their role. Eli reached for my hand again. Lena, can I show you the picture I drew? No, Eli, Danica interjected. She needs to finish cleaning up her mess, but she's hurt. It's okay, baby, I said softly. I'll clean up first. Then I'll come see. As I stood up, Naomi whispered something to Blair. They were watching me, watching Eli, like we were some puzzle that didn't make sense. And maybe to them we didn't. Later that afternoon, I brought out a tray of cinnamon cookies and juice to the patio. I'd baked them fresh, the way Eli liked, crispy edges, soft middle. His face lit up when he saw them. Did you make the cinnamon ones? Just for you, I smiled. And I brought more origami paper. The blue kind you asked for. He clapped his hands. I want to make a dragon this time. The women watched us in silence. He wasn't faking that joy. He wasn't performing. He was just happy. After homework, I reminded him. And I'll help with math if you need. You always help. Vivian cleared her throat loudly. Eli, wouldn't you rather do something more constructive? A sport, perhaps? Or another language? He looked at her, confused. I like origami. The silence that followed said everything. They didn't like me. They didn't want me near him. And something told me they weren't going to play fair. At dinner, I stayed quiet, served their plates, kept my corner. But I could feel it in the air, the beginning of something, a storm, one I wouldn't be able to avoid. If this story is resonating with you, let me know where you're listening from in the comments. Tap the like button if you felt something, and don't forget to subscribe for more emotional stories like this one. We've only just begun. They didn't scream. They didn't push. They didn't call me names in front of Delaney. But they were already starting the war. The first real shot came on Thursday morning, 2 days after the women moved in. I came down to the living room with my cleaning cart and found them all there, waiting. It was like they'd arranged themselves, lounging in perfect stillness on the velvet couches, coffee cups in hand. I hesitated at the door. Morning, I said carefully. Silence. Just the sound of Naomi swirling a spoon in her mug. Then Blair, casually, let a sugar packet slip from her hand to the floor. Oh no, she said, not even looking at me. Could someone? I walked over and picked it up without a word. Then Carmen tipped over a houseplant with her purse. Soil scattered across the rug I had shampooed the day before. My God, she said with a smile. I'm such a klutz, they didn't even try to hide it. I started cleaning. Fast, focused, trying not to look at them. That was my first mistake. Because what they really wanted was a reaction. Eli came running down the stairs right in the middle of it. Socks half on, hair messy, still holding the dragon origami from yesterday. Hi, Lena, he beamed. Why's there dirt on the floor? Before I could speak, Blair stood up. Oh, it was an accident, sweetheart. Your housekeeper's cleaning it up. Eli looked at Carmen. You knocked it over. I saw you. Carmen blinked. No, honey. I think you misunderstood. I didn't. I was upstairs. I glanced at Mr. Delaney's office door. Closed. I was alone with them. And Eli was in the middle. Hey, Lena, he whispered, pulling my arm. Come see the new one I made. I'll be there in a second, I said. Danica crossed her legs and tilted her head. Don't you think a child should spend less time with the staff and more time being developed? Eli frowned. She's not staff. She's Lena. Vivian smiled at him, the kind of smile you use when you're about to talk down to a kid. Sweetheart, it's okay to have favorites. But grown-ups know what's best for you. Lena's what's best for me. Silence. And then the one voice that cut straight through me, Ellie's, steady and loud. I like her more than I like you. The silence cracked. Vivian's eyes went wide. Danica looked like she'd been slapped. Naomi's jaw twitched. You're just a kid, Blair said. You don't even know what's good for you. That's enough, I said quietly. And they turned to me like I'd crossed a line. But in that moment, I didn't care. I wasn't scared of their money. I wasn't scared of their heels or their coats or the way they wore their last names like crowns. I just wanted to protect him. Eli, why don't you go upstairs and finish your drawing? I'll bring you juice in 10 minutes, he looked up at me. Promise, promise, he left, and the second he was out of earshot, Blair's voice turned ice cold. We need to talk about boundaries. That night, I found a message slipped under my bedroom door. It wasn't handwritten, just a printed piece of paper, folded in half. Know your place, no name. No handwriting. No mistake. The next morning, I came downstairs and my cleaning cart was missing. It wasn't in the closet where I always kept it. It wasn't in the basement. I searched for 20 minutes before I found it outside. In the rain. Every bottle tipped over. My name tag torn in half. I stood in the cold, fingers trembling, and picked it all up. Inside the house, laughter floated from the kitchen. Delaney didn't know, not yet. Because people like that, men who've spent years surrounded by polished smiles and smooth talk, they don't always see what's right in front of them. But he was starting to notice. That afternoon, he called me into his study. "Lena," he said. "Sit down a second." I froze. The last time he'd spoken to me like that, I thought I was about to be fired. "Is Eli okay?" I asked. "He's fine. That's actually what I wanted to talk to you about." He leaned forward, elbows on his desk. "I know you weren't hired to take care of my son. That wasn't in your job description." "I never minded," I said quickly. He's a good kid, he is," he agreed. "But something's changed these past few months." I waited. "He used to barely talk. Barely eat. He never laughed. And now he's smiling. Running around. Drawing dragons. Baking cookies." He looked at me. "That's you? You did that?" My throat tightened. I didn't know what to say. "He trusts you, Lena." I opened my mouth to speak, but he wasn't done. "I need to ask, has anyone in the house made you feel uncomfortable?" I thought about the broken glass. The dirt on the floor. The cold stairs. The note under the door. I swallowed hard. "No, sir," I said. "Everything's fine." He nodded slowly, but his eyes didn't quite believe me. 2 days later, he installed cameras in the common areas. Discreet, quiet. Tucked behind vases and beams. He told me later that he didn't even know why, just a feeling. An instinct. And that instinct would change everything. That night, Eli came to the kitchen while I was washing dishes. "Can I stay with you?" he whispered. "It's late, baby." "I don't like them." My hands froze. "I don't like the way they talk. They smile when Dad's around, but when he leaves, they whisper. And they say you're just the maid." I turned slowly. "And I don't want a new mom," he said. "I already have one. It's you." My heart stopped. I crouched down and took his little face in my hands. "I'm not your mom, Eli. You feel like her." And that's when I knew they could break my cart. They could insult me. They could scare me. But they couldn't take that away. They couldn't erase what he felt. That night, I cried for the first time in months. Not because I was scared. Because I was needed. And I knew they'd never let that go unpunished. You can tell when rich people are plotting something. It's in the way they lower their voices, not to hide the words, but to make you feel like they're worth whispering. By the second Sunday, the air in the Delaney house had shifted. They weren't trying to hide it anymore. Blair, Carmen, Vivian, Danica, and Naomi had their own rhythm now. Morning coffee meetings on the veranda, afternoon wine in the garden, evenings circling Michael like swans in a glassy pond. But when I walked into a room, they went silent. Every single time. Eli noticed it first. "Why do they stop talking when you walk in?" "I don't know, baby," I said, trying to sound calm. "Maybe I interrupt their grown-up talk. They don't talk like grown-ups. They talk like villains in cartoons." I almost laughed out, almost. Because deep down I knew he wasn't wrong. That Monday morning, I walked into the pantry and found the cleaning labels switched on all the bottles. Bleach labeled as window spray. Degreaser as wood polish. If I hadn't double-checked, I might have ruined half the house. The trash bin in the kitchen was overflowing, but the food in it was from last week. Someone had dug it out and dumped it on purpose. In the guest bathroom, toothpaste was smeared across the mirror. Feminine products flushed and flooding the toilet. It wasn't even creative. It was just cruel. At first, I told myself not to tell Delaney. He had enough going on. He didn't need drama from the help. But when I opened the linen closet and found Ellie's bedtime stuffed bear, soaking wet, covered in flour and ketchup, I couldn't stay quiet anymore. That was the line. That was the moment something in me snapped. I knocked on the study door with shaking hands. He looked up, surprised. I never bothered him during work hours. "Lena, I'm sorry to interrupt. But I think something's going on." He set down his pen. "What kind of something?" And I told him. Not everything. Not yet. Just enough to see how he'd react. The flipped labels. The bear. The notes. The whispering. His face didn't change much, but his jaw clenched hard. "Okay," he said after a long pause. "I need to show you something." He turned his monitor toward me and hit play. I saw Blair, on the hidden living room camera, pick up Ellie's bear from the couch. She sniffed it. Smirked. Walked out of frame. He clicked again. This time it was Naomi. Pantry camera, pulling out cleaning bottles, rearranging labels, laughing to herself as she did. Another click, Carmen slipping the bear into the kitchen trash bin, right before Ellie's bedtime. I covered my mouth. "Oh my God, I installed the cameras 3 days ago," he said. Something felt off. I didn't want to accuse anyone without proof. I couldn't breathe. "Why didn't you stop them?" He looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time. I needed more to understand why. That night he called a meeting. Just him and the 5 women. I wasn't invited, but I heard the tension through the walls. "I expect every guest in my home to treat staff with respect." "Of course," Blair said smoothly. "But respect is mutual." "Michael, are you implying Lena has disrespected you?" "She's overstepping," said Vivian. "In what way?" Danica leaned forward. "She's too familiar with your son. He hugs her, he calls her by name," Carmen added. "He doesn't even call us anything. She makes his food," Naomi said. "Plays with him. He's obsessed with her." Michael stayed quiet. Then, "So, you're upset that my son likes the woman who's cared for him for 4 months. She's a maid." Blair snapped. "Not a mother." Silence. He ended the meeting early. After everyone went to bed, he came to the kitchen, where I was quietly packing up. "Lena," he said, "can I ask you something?" "Sure." "What exactly do you mean to Eli?" I turned slowly. "I mean what he needs." "And what's that?" "Someone who doesn't treat him like a contract to be won. Someone who listens when he talks about dragons, or school, or missing his mom." Michael leaned against the counter. "He said he wants you to be his new mom." I swallowed. My hands started trembling. I didn't tell him to say that. I know. He looked tired. Not just physically, but bone-deep tired. The kind that comes from living with guilt. "Do you want that?" he asked. "What to be in his life more than this?" My breath caught. It would have been so easy to say yes. But I didn't. "I want whatever's best for him," I said softly. "Even if that's not me." He nodded slowly. Thoughtfully, "I'm starting to think it is." The next day, things got worse. Because someone, and I'll never know which of them, realized I wasn't just a threat to the boy. I was a threat to the man. It started with little things. My uniforms disappeared from the laundry room. Then my bedroom door was found open when I came home from the market, a drawer rifled through, a photo of my mother ripped in half and tossed under the bed. But that wasn't the worst. The worst was Friday afternoon, when Eli came downstairs crying. "They said you're leaving." I crouched down. "Who said that?" "Vivian. And Naomi. They said you were gonna get fired. That you're trying to take my mom's place, and that you're a liar." My chest caved in. "And they said if I keep liking you, I'll never get to see you again." I hugged him tight. "They're wrong," I whispered. So wrong, but in my heart, I didn't know if it was true. That night, Michael called me to the office again. He didn't speak for a while. Just played more videos. This time, a fake investigator being let into the house by Blair. Documents handed over. Whispered instructions. He had audio now. He played a clip of Carmen's voice. "Forge anything. Old records, just make her look like a threat. We'll pay double." Then Blair, "Tell the press if you have to. She won't survive bad publicity." I sat there frozen. "They're trying to ruin your life," Michael said. I nodded slowly. "And they're about to find out what it feels like when someone fights back." I used to think silence was safety. But in that house, silence was how they hunted you. By the start of the 3rd week, Michael had everything he needed: videos, audio, timestamps, even a fake investigator he'd personally followed to a prepaid rental car. But he wasn't ready to make a move yet. And I wasn't sure I could last much longer. Because while he waited for the perfect moment to expose them, they were sharpening their knives. It started with whispers in the neighborhood. First it was the mail lady. Then the woman at the deli. Then someone at the church Eli and I walked past every Sunday morning. "You working up there in that mansion?" "Honey, yes, Mum." "Well, just watch yourself." People stopped making eye contact with me. And when I got home, there were 2 voicemails I didn't recognize. "Homewrecker, we know who you are." That night, I found a printed article slid under the front gate. No name on it. No source. Just a headline: "Housemaid allegedly seduces widower employer using his child," and the picture. Me. Holding Ellie's hand, smiling. A photo taken without my knowledge. Michael was furious. "Where did this come from?" he asked, pacing his office. "I don't know," I whispered. I could barely breathe. "They're leaking to the press," he said. "Anonymous sources. Smearing you in tabloids that pretend to be real journalism." He picked up the phone and called someone. A journalist friend. And that's when the real plan started. Sunday night, we met in the greenhouse. Just the two of us. Rain tapped on the glass above, and the air smelled like wet basil and tomato vines. "I want to do something," he said. "But I can't do it without you." "What kind of something?" "I want to end this. All of it." Publicly, I stayed quiet. "Are you willing to let the world see you?" he asked. My hands were clenched at my sides. "I'm just a maid," I said. "I don't have a team of lawyers or PR reps or anything." He stepped closer. "You have me." I looked up. And for the first time, I believed it. The plan was simple. Wait until the final week, the choosing ceremony, as Blair called it, where Michael was expected to announce which woman he'd pick to complete the family. Instead, he'd reveal everything. The videos, the recordings, the sabotage. The lies. And he'd make one more choice. One they'd never see coming. But until then, I had to act like I didn't know. Like I hadn't heard Blair on the phone setting up fake references for me. Like I hadn't seen Vivian steal documents from the office. Like I hadn't watched Danica pour bleach into my laundry bag. Every hour in that house became a test of endurance. But I stayed. Because Eli was watching. And he was struggling. He'd stopped sleeping through the night. Started having nightmares again. Started asking me, over and over, "You're not gonna leave, right?" I'd hold him tight and whisper, "I'm not going anywhere," but I wasn't sure how many more lies I could live through. Then came Thursday morning. The morning everything cracked. I came down to the kitchen at 6:15 a.m., same as always. But instead of silence, I found Blair, Carmen, and Naomi already there, makeup done, coffee cups full, like they'd been waiting. "Morning," I said quietly. "Lena," Blair said sweetly. "How's your back?" "Must be exhausting scrubbing this place," Carmen chuckled. "I'd be exhausted too, clinging to a job that's clearly on borrowed time." Naomi looked up from her phone. "Did you see the latest headline?" I didn't answer. She slid the phone across the counter toward me. "Unqualified nanny or gold digger? Sources claim maid's manipulation of wealthy widower has gone too far." A picture of Eli and me on the front lawn. My arm around him. It felt like a punch in the ribs. "You can sue for that," I muttered. "Oh honey," Blair said, standing. "People like you don't sue. You disappear." "Excuse me, you were never supposed to matter," she said, stepping closer. "You clean floors. You fold towels. You don't become family." Carmen stood too. "And yet, here you are, holding hands with the air." I was trembling now. "This is harassment," Naomi laughed. "This is survival, and you? You're the inconvenience." Eli walked in right then. Eyes puffy. Still in his pajamas. He took one look at the phone and froze. "Why are they showing pictures of us?" "Sweetheart, it's nothing," I said quickly, walking toward him. But Blair stepped between us. "No more lies," she said coldly. "He deserves the truth. You don't get to decide what he deserves." "I do now." That was when Michael walked in. And for the first time, he wasn't smiling. He wasn't patient. He wasn't calm. "Out," he said. Blair blinked. "Excuse me." "Out of my kitchen." "Out of my son's face." Now. Naomi laughed nervously. "Michael, relax." "We were just," I said out. The women scattered, stunned. And then he turned to me. "You okay?" I nodded. Eli rushed into my arms and buried his face in my chest. And I held him like my life depended on it. Because in that moment, it did. Later that night, the rest of the footage came in. Not just audio-video. Danica paying the fake investigator. Carmen leaking fake reports. Vivian on a call with a tabloid, feeding her lines. Naomi emailing old photos of me with captions edited to make me look unstable. It was more than enough. And Michael smiled. Not the way he usually smiled. This one was sharper. Colder. "Sunday," he said. "We burn it all down." I thought the worst part of being invisible was being ignored. Turns out, it's worse when people finally look at you and wish they hadn't. Sunday, 4:50 p.m. The guests had arrived. The Delaney estate, usually quiet on weekends, now buzzed like a gala. Champagne flutes, polished shoes, laughing voices, family friends, business partners, neighbors, local press. Everyone who mattered, and more than a few who didn't. They came to see a love story. A rich man choosing his next wife. An adorable child getting a new mother. What they didn't know was that they were walking into a war zone. I stayed in the kitchen for most of it. Out of sight like always. But tonight wasn't like always. Tonight, I wasn't just the help. I was the witness, the target, and maybe the storm. Michael had staged everything perfectly. The women were told there'd be a private dinner followed by a small announcement, his final decision. Which of the 5 women would become part of the family? His fiancée, Ellie's new mom. They dressed like it was the Oscars. Blair in a navy silk gown. Vivian in backless gold. Naomi in emerald. Carmen in designer red. Danica in pure white, like she was already walking down the aisle. They smiled for the cameras, blew her kisses, took selfies on the marble staircase. I watched from the butler's pantry, heart pounding, sweat trickling down my spine. Michael stood calm, composed, but I could see it in his eyes. The same fire I saw the night he promised. They're not just going to lose. They're going to answer for it. At exactly 7:05 p.m., the lights dimmed. The room quieted. The orchestra paused. And Michael stood. He tapped his glass. Thank you all for coming tonight. His voice was smooth, steady. I know many of you came expecting a celebration. An announcement. And you'll get one. But before I introduce the woman I've chosen, he looked out over the crowd. I need to tell you a story. The air shifted. The smiles faltered. The 5 women sat up straighter. Michael took a breath. Over the past month, 5 women have lived in my home. They came here with one purpose, to become my wife and Ellie's stepmother. That's what they told me. That's what I believed. He looked over at Eli, sitting beside me behind the curtain. But sometimes, children see what adults miss. He clicked a small remote. Behind him, a massive screen lit up. And suddenly, the living room camera feed began to play. Blair's voice, she's just a maid. Make her look unstable. No one will believe her. Carmen's voice, find something in her past. Or invent it. Doesn't matter. Naomi's voice, I'll leak photos to the tabloids. She'll be done by Tuesday. Danica's voice, tell them she's manipulative. That she's replacing the mother. Vivian's voice, if the kid keeps loving her, we'll cut him off too. Gasps. Hands covering mouths. Phones raised. Eyebrows vanishing behind hairlines. You could hear a pin drop. And then came the kicker, a video of me, finding Ellie's destroyed bear in the trash. My trembling hands. My whisper to him, it's okay, baby. I'll fix it, followed by the audio of Eli. 1 week later, I already have a mom. It's Lena. Blair stood up, red-faced. This is manipulated, Vivian yelled over her. This is illegal. You recorded us without consent, Naomi was shaking. You can't show this. This wasn't meant to. Carmen tried to stand but stumbled. Danica just sat silent, pale. Michael raised his hand. I didn't plan on making this public. But once they leaked false stories about my employee, planted fake reports, paid an investigator to create lies, I didn't have a choice. He turned slowly. Lena, I stepped into the light. For the first time, not in a uniform. Just a simple navy dress. Clean shoes. Hair pulled back. And every eye turned to me. I thought I'd be scared. But I wasn't. Because Ellie's little hand slid into mine. And that gave me more strength than any microphone ever could. Michael continued. This woman, he said, is the reason my son smiles again. The reason my home has felt like a home. He paused. And I let her be humiliated. I didn't speak up sooner. That's on me, he faced me. I'm sorry, Lena, my chest tightened, I nodded. It's okay, and for once I meant it. Blair turned on her heel and started toward the door. You haven't heard the last of this, she snapped. Michael looked at her. Oh, I think we have. Security stepped forward. You're all welcome to leave, he said. And I suggest you do so quietly. One by one, they left, some crying, some swearing, some stunned into silence. The room erupted in whispers. But then applause. Slowed up building. Genuine. Someone shouted, that's how you clean house. And I swear, for one perfect moment, I felt weightless. Backstage, Eli looked up at me. You're not leaving now, right? No, baby, I said, hugging him tight. I'm staying, he smiled. Good. 'Cause I already picked you, I laughed. Full, ugly, wet-faced laughter. You picked me, yeah, he said. From the very beginning, Michael stepped beside us. I don't want you to just be his pick, Lena, I turned. I want you to be mine, too. The crowd was still murmuring. Still filming. He took my hand right there in front of everyone. I'm not offering you a job, he said softly. I'm offering you a life. My eyes burned. And I whispered back, then I accept. It's easy to survive when you're fighting. It's harder when the war is over, and you don't know who you are without the armor. The morning after the dinner felt like waking up in someone else's life. For the first time in months, I wasn't preparing a breakfast tray by 6 a.m. I wasn't scrubbing out lies from the marble. I wasn't hiding. Instead, I was sitting in the garden with a mug of coffee, across from the man who used to be my employer. Now, I didn't know what he was. Maybe mine. Maybe something even scarier real. Michael was different that morning. Lighter somehow, but also older. Like the mask he'd been wearing had finally cracked and he wasn't sure what he looked like underneath. He reached across the little patio table and brushed a leaf off my wrist. "You slept okay?" I nodded. He gave a quiet laugh. First time in weeks, Eli came out barefoot, still in his pajamas, hair sticking up like wild grass. He didn't say anything. Just climbed into my lap, laid his head on my chest, and exhaled like he'd been holding it in for years. I looked over his head at Michael. He looked back at me, and I swear in that one glance, I saw everything: the guilt, the gratitude, the awe, and maybe something more. The next few days were strange in all the ways that matter. I stopped wearing a uniform. The staff, what was left of them, started talking to me like I wasn't temporary. Michael would find excuses to pass through the kitchen more than necessary. Eli drew a picture of the three of us and taped it to my bedroom door. And still, something in me couldn't believe it. I'd lived most of my life surviving this. This felt like living, and I didn't know how to do that yet. 2 nights later, Michael found me in the attic. I'd come up there to breathe. The air was dusty, warm, and full of old furniture covered in white sheets. It looked like a room full of ghosts. He didn't say anything at first. Just sat beside me on the creaky floorboards. "I thought I might find you here," I nodded. He was quiet a moment. "Then, you okay?" I shook my head slowly. "I don't know, want to talk?" So I did. And for the first time, I told someone everything. I told him about my mom, how she cleaned houses her whole life, how she died in a hospital that forgot her name. I told him about the foster homes, about the families who said I was too quiet, too intense, too broken. I told him about the first job I ever had, cleaning toilets in a private school I could never afford to attend, and how I used to memorize flashcards left behind on cafeteria tables, just to feel smart for 5 minutes a day. I told him how I once believed that if I stayed small enough, quiet enough, useful enough, maybe someone would choose me. He didn't interrupt once. He just sat there, hands folded, eyes damp. When I finished, I was trembling. He reached over and took my hand. And he said, for words I'll never forget, "You were always enough." I broke. I sobbed so hard it felt like grief, like I was finally mourning the girl who never got to feel wanted. He pulled me into his arms and held me until I could breathe again. And that's when he whispered, "I love you," not dramatic, not loud. Just honest. Like it had been waiting for the right moment. I froze. Because I didn't know how to receive something I never thought I deserved. But when I looked at him, I knew. I loved him too. "I don't know how to do this," I said. "We figure it out together. What if I ruin it?" He smiled. "You won't." That night, I told Eli. We were folding his laundry and listening to music when he asked, "Are you and Dad gonna be a thing now?" I laughed. "A thing, you know. Like in movies? Where they kiss and stuff." I hesitated. Then said it. "Yeah, I think we are." He looked down at the folded socks. Then up at me. "Does that mean you're my mom now?" I looked him in the eyes. "You already made me your mom, Eli." That happened a long time ago. He didn't say anything. Just hugged me so hard my ribs ached. 3 days later, Michael made it official. A quiet dinner in the garden. Candles. String lights. Just us three. He handed me a small box. Inside, a ring. Nothing fancy. Just a silver band with a tiny engraving inside. "Home is you." I didn't cry right away. But when Eli whispered, "Please say yes," I nearly collapsed. "I say yes," I told them both. "To both of you, you can win the war and still not feel safe." Because sometimes the scars whisper louder than the enemies ever did. The day after Michael proposed, everything felt surreal. Not flashy, not movie perfect, just still. For the first time in my life, nobody was waiting for me to fail. I wasn't afraid to answer the door. I didn't flinch when someone said my name. And every time I walked past a mirror, I barely recognized the woman looking back. She was still me, still Lena Monroe from nowhere, with a half-worn coat and a soft voice. But she also had a ring on her finger. And a boy who called her mom. And a man who held her like she was the most valuable thing in the room. The house changed too. It wasn't quiet in the way it used to be, heavy, silent, suffocating. Now it was full of little sounds, Ellie's laughter, music from the kitchen, Michael humming when he thought no one was listening. They cleared out the guest rooms, took down the cameras, erased every trace of the women who'd tried to turn that place into a cage. But trauma doesn't leave with the furniture, and healing has its own timeline. One afternoon, I was in the walk-in closet, organizing Michael's ties, not because I had to, just because old habits die slow, when I saw it. An envelope tucked behind the dresser. My name. No stamp. My heart started racing before I even touched it. I opened it. Inside, one photograph. A close-up of me, taken at the market 3 days ago, holding a grocery bag in one hand and Ellie's backpack in the other. Behind me, Michael smiling. There was no note, no signature, just the picture. A warning without a single word. I didn't tell Michael that night. Not because I wanted to lie, but because I needed to think. What scared me wasn't the photo. It was how familiar the fear felt. How easily it came back. How quickly it told me, you don't belong here. I didn't sleep. At 3:00 a.m., I went to the kitchen for water and found Michael already there. No tie. Bare feet. Tired eyes. You too, he said, holding up his coffee. I nodded. He poured me a glass, handed it over, then asked, what happened? I froze. He always knew when I was lying. Or hiding. So I told him. I showed him the photo. And he didn't flinch. He just looked at it, then looked at me. Do you think it was one of them? Maybe. They're not coming back, Lena. I wanted to believe him. But something in me whispered they never really left. The next morning, he called in a favor, a private security firm he used during litigation years ago. Discreet. Ex-military. Former intelligence. The whole deal. I sat in on the call, even though I barely understood half of it. But one sentence chilled me: she needs protection, and so does my son. The next 48 hours were quiet again. Too quiet. Eli didn't know anything, of course. Just thought we were getting new alarms. He loved watching the technician crawl under the house like a spy. Michael and I tried to keep things normal. But inside, I felt like I was holding my breath again. Until the call came. It was a Thursday night. Dinner had just ended. Eli was upstairs brushing his teeth. I was drying plates when Michael stepped outside to take the call. When he came back, his face was pale. Not afraid. Not angry. Controlled. Like a man who had just heard something that required exact precision to handle. He set his phone down. That was the firm. I stopped wiping the plate. They tracked the source of the photograph. My throat tightened. He looked at me. It was Blair. I should have been surprised. I wasn't. I should have been angry. I wasn't that either. Mostly I felt tired. Because I knew what this meant. Some people lose power and walk away. Others lose it and start burning the forest down on their way out. Michael held my hand. She's trying to bait you, bait us. She's not done. I looked down. Then neither am I. The next day, the firm delivered a report. Blair had been reaching out to old reporters, ex-boyfriends, distant relatives, trying to find something, anything, to drag me through again. But there was nothing to find. Because I had never done anything wrong. And that, apparently, infuriated her more than if I had. That night, Michael made a decision. He invited her to lunch. Not a trap. Not a setup. A boundary. She arrived at the restaurant dressed like she was still auditioning for royalty. Michael sat across from her. Voice calm. Words chosen. And told her, once and for all, this is your last warning. If you contact Lena, my son, or any member of this household again, legal action will follow. You're done. She smirked, laughed, said he was bluffing. Then he handed her the security report. Copies of the email. Surveillance footage. And a letter drafted by his lawyer, signed and sealed. She paled. And for once, she shut up. When he came home, I was in the backyard, planting rosemary with Eli. He kissed my forehead and said, it's over, and I asked, for real? He nodded. And I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding for 10 years. That night, I finally slept. Not because I believed I'd never be afraid again, but because for once I knew I wouldn't face it alone. When all you've ever known is survival, peace can feel like a trap. Joy can feel like a lie. But eventually, even the most wounded parts of you begin to believe in mourning. I didn't notice I was changing until Eli called me mom in front of someone else. It was the checkout clerk at the local bookstore. We were picking out supplies for his school project, construction paper, tape, some animal encyclopedia he'd been begging for, and he pointed at the cashier and said proudly, this is my mom. She helps me make paper dragons. The clerk smiled and scanned the books. But I stood there frozen, like I'd just heard thunder on a clear day. He'd said it before, of course, in private, in whispers, curled up against my side. But this was public. Unapologetic. Proud. And I realized I hadn't just stepped into his world. I'd become part of it. Life didn't get perfect overnight. Michael still worked long hours. I still caught myself flinching at sudden knocks. Eli still had bad dreams sometimes. But the mansion no longer felt haunted. We filled it with noise, music, cartoons, bread baking, laughter. I started painting again, not walls, but canvases. Eli joined me, covering his in glitter glue and googly eyes. Michael built a bookshelf with his own hands, said it was cheaper. I think he just wanted to feel useful. We held movie nights on the floor, ate popcorn out of salad bowls. Sometimes Michael fell asleep halfway through, and I'd cover him with a blanket and just sit there, watching the two people who saved me without even trying. Then one morning, everything shifted. It started with nausea. I thought it was a bad egg. A stomach bug, stress. But then it happened again. And again. By the fourth morning, Michael caught me throwing up in the downstairs bathroom. He knocked gently. Lena. You okay? I'm fine, I said, lying. Obviously. He didn't press. But I saw the worry in his eyes. And later that day, when he took Eli to soccer, I walked 5 blocks to the nearest pharmacy. I paid in cash. Didn't even take a bag. Just tucked the test into my coat pocket like it was contraband. Back home, I locked the bathroom door and stared at it on the counter. My hands were shaking, not because I didn't want the answer. Because I did. And that scared me more than anything. For the first time in my life, I wanted more. More than survival. More than just making it. I wanted family. Permanence. Another heartbeat to love. Even if it meant risking everything again. The test turned positive in less than a minute. 2 lines. Clear. Sharp. Real. I stared at it until my knees gave out. And I cried harder than I did the day he proposed. Because somehow this made it real. Not the ring. Not the house. Not even being called mom. This tiny, growing thing that didn't care about money or status or headlines. This was mine. I didn't tell Michael that night. Not because I didn't want to. But because I wanted to do it right. With intention. With joy. So the next day, I sat down with Eli while we painted. I told him, remember when you asked for a baby brother or sister? He perked up. Yeah, well, that might be happening. His paintbrush froze. His eyes grew wide. And then he screamed, the kind of scream only a kid with nothing to fear can make. He ran down the hallway shouting, Dad. Mom's having a baby, so much for doing it gently. Michael found me still in the studio, laughing through my tears. He walked in slowly, holding Ellie's drawing of a stick figure baby with a crown. He didn't say anything. Just set the picture down, pulled me into his arms, and whispered, you gave me a second chance. Now I get to give you one. We didn't plan a big announcement. We just let it be real. Let it sink in. Let it shape us. Michael started reading baby books at night. Eli picked names off superhero shows. I bought a soft blanket I didn't need, just to hold something new. And every morning, I'd rest my hand on my stomach and think, I was never meant to be invisible. 3 weeks later, we held a small gathering in the garden. Just family. Friends. A few neighbors. And when Michael stood beside me and announced we were expecting, the applause wasn't loud. But it was full. Full of people who had watched us climb out of fire and into light. I caught myself holding Ellie's hand on one side and Michael's on the other. And for the first time since I was a child, I wasn't afraid of losing anything. Because I wasn't hiding anymore. Sometimes, the hardest part of healing is realizing you don't have to keep preparing for pain. The baby came early. Not dangerously early, just enough to throw off our perfectly imperfect plans. We were halfway through rearranging the guest room into a nursery. Michael was mid-call with a contractor. Eli was building a crib out of Legos. And then my water broke. Right there in the hallway, holding a basket of folded baby clothes. Michael panicked harder than I did. I don't even have the hospital bag in the car. Wait, is this too soon? Are we okay, Lena? Why are you laughing? Because I couldn't stop. Because this life, this loud, unfiltered, messy life was mine now. And I was about to meet the person I'd been holding in dreams. We named her Hannah Joy Delaney. 6 pounds. Quiet cry. Already had Ellie's eyes. When they handed her to me, I didn't cry right away. I just stared. And whispered, you made it. You really made it, because I wasn't just holding a baby. I was holding proof. That love doesn't skip people like me. That softness can survive trauma. That something beautiful can grow in the cracks. Eli was obsessed. The second he saw her, he gasped like she was a magic trick. Can I hold her? Wash your hands first, I smiled. He stood on a chair beside the hospital bed, holding her like the world might fall if he blinked. "She's so small," he whispered. "You were that small once." "No way," he said. "She looks like she could fit in a sandwich." Michael laughed so hard the nurse came in to check if everything was okay. It was more than okay. It was full. We went home 2 days later. The nursery was still unfinished. Bottles still in boxes. We barely knew how to swaddle. But none of it mattered. Eli called her Squish, Michael sang lullabies off-key. I slept sitting up for a week, afraid to miss a single breath. We were tired, disorganized, completely out of our depth, and happier than I'd ever imagined possible. And then one day the doorbell rang. 3 weeks after Hannah's birth. Michael was at work. Eli was in the backyard with a soccer ball. I opened the door, still in my robe, hair in a braid, baby monitor clipped to my pocket, expecting a package. But it wasn't FedEx. It was Vivian. She looked different. No makeup. Hair pulled into a tight bun. Simple jeans. A plain black sweater. Not a designer label in sight. I didn't say anything. Just held the door and waited. She looked down, then up. "I'm not here to start anything," she said. I swear still I didn't move. I heard about the baby. And I needed to see it for myself. "That I survived you?" I asked quietly. She winced. "That you're still standing?" I didn't invite her in. But I didn't shut the door either. We stood in silence. Wine rustling the bushes. Ellie's laughter echoing faintly from the backyard. Finally, she said, "You were always the one he was going to choose." I just didn't know how to lose. I crossed my arms. "So you tried to destroy me." "I tried to erase you," she said softly. "And I failed, and I live with it." Another silence. "I lost everything." Lena, sponsors, contracts, my following, even my family pulled back. She looked up at me. "But that's not why I'm here." "Then why are you here?" "To say I'm sorry." It didn't feel satisfying. Didn't feel righteous. It just felt sad. Because for the first time, she wasn't sneering or posturing. She looked like a woman with no masks left. And even though I owed her nothing, I heard myself say, "Okay, just one word." Not forgiveness, not friendship, just permission for both of us to let go. She nodded once, turned, and walked away. And I watched her go, baby monitor still beeping in my pocket. That night I told Michael. He didn't get angry. Just kissed Hannah's forehead and said, "You did the right thing." I wasn't sure. But later, while watching Hannah sleep curled up like a question mark, I understood something. Forgiveness isn't for them. It's for you. So you don't carry it forever. 3 months passed. The nursery was painted. Eli started 2nd grade. Michael and I finally found time for a date night. Ended up eating cold pizza on the living room floor while Hannah napped in her carrier. It wasn't glamorous, but it was real. And sometimes, when I caught my reflection, messy hair, spit up on my shirt, a child on each hip, I'd smile and whisper, "This is what they tried to take from me, and they didn't win." You never really know how far you've come until you hear yourself laugh and realize it's been years since the sound came without fear. 11 years later, the house is quieter now. Not because anything's missing, but because everyone's outliving the life we built together. Ellie's away at college, a freshman at NYU majoring in digital design. He FaceTimes every weekend, sends me bad memes during lectures, and signs every text, "Love you, Mom." Hannah's 10, full of questions, constantly barefoot, always humming some song she made up on the spot. Michael's gray now. Still refuses to use reading glasses. Still hums off-key when he's stressed. Still kisses me in the middle of my sentences like he waited too long to be loved and never wants to waste a second. And me, I paint, I mother. I tend to a garden that used to be just grass and fear. And sometimes I walk through the halls of this house and touch the doorknobs, just to remind myself that I stayed. The guest rooms are now art studios. The cameras are long gone. The ghosts never really returned. Though once in a while I do get emails. From people I'll never meet. Women. Men. Teenagers. People who saw the story go viral back then. The maid, the lies, the child who chose love over money. They ask me, "How did you survive it?" And sometimes I ask myself the same thing. Because I wasn't supposed to. Not in the way people meant it. I wasn't supposed to end up in a mansion. Or fall in love with the man who paid me to fold his shirts. I wasn't supposed to raise a child that wasn't mine and be chosen anyway. I wasn't supposed to have another. I wasn't supposed to heal. But here I am. With photographs lining the staircase, and a mug that says "World's Okayest Mom," and a husband who still holds my hand while we're brushing our teeth. Not perfect, not rich, but whole. Hannah asked me last week if I ever think about the women who tried to ruin everything. And I told her the truth, not anymore, not because I forgive them fully, but because they never got to see this part. The part where I didn't just survive, I stayed soft. Tonight is special. Ellie's coming home for fall break. And Hannah made a sign that says, "Welcome back to the real world, college boy. We're baking cinnamon cookies." Michael's making spaghetti, which will be 90% garlic and 10% apology. And I'm standing here, in this kitchen that once held so much silence, and all I can think is, this. This is the miracle. Not that we found each other, but that we chose to stay. Later, after dinner, we sit out on the porch, all four of us. Eli stretches his legs across Michael's lap. Hannah shows off a glitter-glued school project. And I'm asked, again, "Mom, will you ever tell your whole story?" I smile. Because I already did. And maybe someday, they'll read it back. Not in headlines, not in scandals, not in viral clips, but in the way I loved them. In the house I helped build. In the quiet I protected. In the little moments like now. If this story moved you, if you've ever been afraid to hope and then found joy waiting anyway, I'd love to know where you're listening from. Leave a comment with your city. Hit like if you believe in second chances. Subscribe for more stories like this. Because no matter where you came from, you are never too far from a beginning, and love, it still picks the quiet ones.